It's Leanne Scott from the Profitable Podcast by Chirp. And today with me, I have Rankyn from Campbell Health. And I'm super excited to chat to Rankyn today because I know that as an entrepreneur, it is a roller coaster ride. Sometimes you're up, sometimes you're low for a long time. And it only takes one win to re-energize you. But we all know that the toil of that stress and that roller coaster over years can take a real toll on an entrepreneur's mental health. Now, as we come up to the end of the year, I think I'm seeing more and more entrepreneurs are struggling. They're burnt out, they're exhausted. And so I'm really looking forward to speaking to you today, Rankyn, to find out what you think us as entrepreneurs could be doing to better protect our mental health. But first up, can you introduce yourself and tell us a bit about who you are and how you got to where you are today?
Yeah, sure. Thank you, Leanne. Thanks so much for having me on here today. I'm super pumped about it. I love having these conversations. Obviously, you got the name right. You even pronounced it right, so that's a good
Did
sign.
I?
My name's Rankyn. I am an East Coast Canadian. I founded Campbell Health. We're a full service virtual mental health team. So our team, first, I'd say that I'm blessed with having a super good team that works for me. We provide mental health services, evidence-based mental health services to Canadians, and those services fall into three different areas. They're comprehensive psychological assessments, they're psychotherapy, so that's therapy for a range of psychological problems or just more general life stuff, relationships. And also we have a B2B division, so we do a lot of corporate wellness for teams, for athletes, and for businesses that want to take individual and mental performance to the next level. That's Campbell Health in a nutshell.
Amazing. And tell me, you specifically, did you study psychology, or how did you end up starting a business? Because that can be quite polar opposite in some ways.
Yeah, I did. My goal first was to obviously get all the clinical training because it's really important to come at this with a clinical lens, right? We're working with human beings, we're working with their mental health, and we're working with them at some of the most vulnerable times that they may ever have in their life. So I completed my training. I completed my master's degree in counseling psychology and completed my research at the University of New Brunswick. And then I went on to complete my clinical training. And then as my career progressed after graduate school, I founded our team. So in that role, I was seeing clients myself. I am a therapist myself, and then built out the bones of our tech and built out the bones of our care and what it is that we do as we go so that we could support more people.
Awesome. And obviously, we started the conversation talking about mental health, and I know everybody's very aware of the pandemic, but what I'm seeing in terms of entrepreneurs is that it's been such a tumultuous couple of years recovering from the pandemic that often business owners feel like they can't take any time out. Are you seeing repercussions for business owners in the last, say, 12 months?
Definitely. And I would say that I see that both clinically, what comes through our team, but also just in conversations with other entrepreneurs, maybe in more casual or informal conversations, you can pick up on it in their face, in their body language, just how completely exhausted they are. And I think so much has changed in a few years, right? I think and it's been tough on entrepreneurs. It's really been a true test of resilience. I think it's been a true test of resilience. And I think we all do have a limit that we can take. And that limit's been being tested for sure.
But why do you think that is? Do you think it is specifically harder of late, or is it just that maybe, how do I say, is it outside economic difficulties that's impacting this? Or is it that we've just been going for so long? Or is it all the bad news that we keep hearing? Like, why does it seem as if it's really coming to a head in the last, I would say, 6 months?
There's so many factors that go into that question. Of course, you could approach it from, okay, economically, there's so much uncertainty, so much changes in national and global markets, which those have real impacts on businesses, on livelihoods with really steep inflation and different factors. At least I can speak to mostly what we see here in Canada and how that affects people. And I think that psychologically, entrepreneurs tend to be very isolated and very on an island with the problems that they have to face. And we know that's not really how we're designed to flourish as humans, right? We need each other. We need people to understand us. We need to feel that we have support when we face problems. And entrepreneurs tend to become more isolated and alone with their problems. And mentally, that can be really difficult because they can start to spiral and they start to feel overwhelmed by trying to solve every single problem for their customers financially, and also balancing that with their responsibilities to take care of themselves and their families. That's a big factor that I would say too, man.
Yeah, and in terms of coping strategies, specifically for entrepreneurs, all the standard advice is identify the source of your stress. I run a business. Take time out. I can't take time out because I have to provide for my family. So, what kind of strategies do you think would specifically support a more positive mental health for an entrepreneur, or maybe looking at it as better coping mechanisms that do take into account what entrepreneurs have to do versus the self-care and recovery that they could undertake?
For sure. And I can pick up how you're saying it, and it can feel a little disingenuous when entrepreneurs are facing so much stress and then they come across a Google article or a friend saying, oh, just take time off or take a vacation. It
Yeah.
really seems like it's missing the mark. And in so many ways it is, right? Because I don't, even as a therapist and as an entrepreneur myself, like I can really relate to how off the mark that is. So I want to put that out there. I think that a big thing for entrepreneurs is to increase their self-awareness. Okay, increase their awareness of their own thoughts and the thoughts that they tend to get snagged up on. And when we talk about mental resilience and being able to face stress, the biggest mental reminder to ourselves when we start to spiral is, as entrepreneurs, reminding ourselves all of the problems that we've faced and we've successfully overcome over our life or over our entrepreneurial journey. Because entrepreneurship, by definition, is going to evoke stress. So not having that stress is, for 99% of entrepreneurs, is just not going to happen. I think a lot of us even thrive on the stress. It's just having that kind of that self-awareness to bring us back, ground ourselves, and to remind ourselves when we're facing that new problem, okay, here's all the problems that I've solved in the past and the resources that I've used, and I can again do this again and face this next problem, right? That's like a mental reminder to yourself.
So I'm busy reading 10x is Easier Than 2x by Dr. Benjamin Hardy. And one of the things that they're covering at the moment is around the difference between the gap and the gain. And I actually found that was a really good reframe for myself, because as an entrepreneur, we're always striving for that goal, that $1 million business, that multi-million dollar business. We're going to have this, we're going to have that. And so it can feel like you're not making any progress because those goals are so far ahead and you completely discount the progress that you've already achieved. So their philosophy is that a lot of people live in that gap, but you've got the gain. So you look retrospectively. So looking back, what have you achieved since 3 years? What lessons have you learned in the last 12 months? What progress have you made in the last 90 days, in the last month, in the last 2 weeks, in the last week, and in the last 24 hours? And actually, I found that reframe massively helpful in terms of, even though things are not exactly where I'd like them to be, being able to see the progression towards getting closer to that has really made me feel a whole lot more positive, a lot better about things. Any thoughts?
Yeah, 100%, right? And it's I've read that book too, and I can relate to that, and I can also relate to the feeling of the gap, right? That no matter where you are personally, professionally, as a therapist, or either as an entrepreneur, that you always feel that you're behind or that you could do more or you should be doing more. And I think that's what propels us forward. That's what makes us entrepreneurs. But being able to ground yourself in that moment and realize those things. And I try to remind myself too, like, of all the knowledge that I've gained over the last, use your reference point, but maybe a year, 2 years. And even if I make big changes or my business isn't where I want it to be, I'm so much better equipped now than I was 6, 12,
Mm.
or 18 months ago to make my next decision. So that can be really helpful as well. And I would say that the other point that I would make when you're circling back to strategies is that entrepreneurs, we're still human and we still need those connections with other people that make us stronger. As human beings, since the dawn of time, we've needed each other, we've needed the pack to have a quality of life, to survive, and to also feel fulfilled. And as entrepreneurs, we still need those things.
Yeah, definitely. So you and I both have met through Dan Martel's Elite Mastermind, and that has I have found massively helpful because it's like-minded people, business owners who are all striving to build a better life. Without being like too raw, that feeling of if you're having a bad day, you can hop in there and get that moral support that you need from that kind of peer group. I find has been massively helpful in terms of my own mental health as well as building my business.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. And I think that they do an excellent Dan does an excellent job with that with his group. And there's so many bright, smart, motivated people in the group as well that you and I can both learn from for sure. And it can be outside of the group, connecting with people in your community, connecting with people that you love, and having that time where you do not feel so isolated, I think, because isolation is such a big thing that so many entrepreneurs bring to therapy. Right? It
Mm,
can be a lot. It can be hard for people that are not entrepreneurs to understand them, and it can be hard to build connections, whether that's dating romantically or with friends, because some people, if they're not in that world, they just don't understand the stresses, maybe to quite
yeah.
the same degree.
No, for sure, for sure. I read recently that probably one of the highest risk groups for suicide are entrepreneurs in their mid 40s to mid 50s, I think it is.
Yes,
Um,
absolutely, and that stat is correct, and that shows to me that as a collective, as a kind of a global group of entrepreneurs, I guess you could say that we're failing many of our peers. And that comes to me as a health company, we're still have so much more to do. And as an individual, have so much more to do to be able to contribute to that, to make sure that that statistic is not there.
exactly. It just makes me sad. I was in a business networking group. In the space of 6 months, we lost two of our members to suicide, and we meet weekly. And it's sad to think that those particular individuals would show up every week and nobody knew that they were suffering quite so much until it was too late.
Yeah, I'm really sorry to hear that. My condolences. And it's a sad reality that we're facing, which is good that we're having conversations like this. And on a positive note, I think that more entrepreneurs are starting to take their mental and their physical health more seriously than they may have 20 to 25 years ago.
Yeah.
I think that culturally we're seeing a shift, and I think that that is one of the good cultural shifts that's happening right now.
Yeah, I do think people are much more open to discussing their mental health and seeking out help. So tell me a little bit about Campbell Health and how it started, because it's virtual therapy, is that right?
Yes, it is. Yeah, it started a long time ago when I was a teenager, wanting to become either a therapist or a medical doctor, and really contribute to the mental health field, right? So as a teenager, I was growing up in rural Canada. There was not a ton of services 15 years ago. There was really nothing. So a lot of things have changed in that front. Um, but there was a member of the community that had taken his own life. It was one of those moments that was like you're explaining with those friends. It was really tragic. And that was what propelled me to study psychology, to move through the various degrees and training that you need, and also evolve as a person. A lot of that is working on yourself and working on your own biases and your own mental health so that you can actually be a support for other people. And you know, my I'm just one guy. I'm not there's lots of people in the field even that work for me that are so knowledgeable, so smart, and I wanted to put them all together and create something that's much bigger than myself. So it was definitely like not something that I could do on my own. My team is tremendous. I learn so much from them every day, and we at Campbell Health, we want to be able to provide that level of psychological service that we would expect if we were the patient. That's what we go by, right? Because someday it could be us that is the patient.
Yeah, for sure. And in terms of if we think about, we've spoken a lot about being entrepreneurs, we're also parents. And I'm so heartbroken to see how teenagers are really struggling with anxiety, and to see a young person who's got their whole life ahead of them think that suicide is the only option they
Mm.
have. Like, what kind of advice do you have for how we can become more aware of the struggles that our entrepreneurial friends are having, that our kids are having? There must Are there signs that you can look for? Are there ways that you can be more supportive?
Definitely. And I think that it is really to speak on the teenagers of the hundreds of parents and thousands of parents that we work with, like parents really do care. They really do care. And they're sometimes struggling to connect with their kids. The world's a little bit different than it was maybe when they grew up or one or two generations ago. But as much as the world's changed, as human beings, like I always remind people that we are looking for the same things as we have been for centuries.
Yeah.
We're looking for connection with other people, right? We're looking to feel safe in our relationships. We're looking to feel respected, and we're looking to be able to explore the world and take risks and come back to a safe place that is supportive. And if kids have those factors, it significantly improves their mental health. And I think that we live in such a fast-paced, stressful world now. Economically, for so many families, it's stressful, with different things that happen in the world with globalization. It's changed the way that we live a bit. And some of those community ties that we used to have, and those strong relationship ties and having that safety and security, those have evaporated. And we are living in a time where, despite what people believe in terms of the amount of followers that they have and their apps and stuff, people are lonelier now than they've ever been in the history of time. And that's teenagers and adults and entrepreneurs. So I would just ask people, if they want to be helpful, to genuinely connect with people, to genuinely check in on them, and to check in with themselves and see if, hey, I need to get out there and connect genuinely with other people again, not just maybe through a text or through liking a message, but take the time to have a face-to-face conversation with them
Yeah.
and uninterrupted, right? And it sounds very simple, especially people are looking for all kinds of strategies in therapy and stuff. But I think if people ask themselves that question, they will find that they do not really connect as well as they used to.
So, one of the things that I've noticed with my daughter, who is 15, we were talking about it recently, is that when we were all growing up, you'd spend all day with your boyfriend or your girlfriend at school. Maybe you saw them at sports practice after school for a bit, and then you'd go home, you'd have dinner, and you'd spend an hour on the phone just chatting. Like that was what you did. And if you had siblings, you had to fight over who got the hour on the phone. I'll never forget like Friday nights when if we weren't allowed to go out, my mum and dad would be watching a movie or TV and I'd be on the phone in their bedroom talking to my,
You're really aging yourself here,
I
Leanne.
really am, what time? And I feel even older when I think about my daughter's got a boyfriend
Yeah.
and they don't talk to each other. Like they snap and they text
Mm.
all day long, but the thought of actually having to pick up the phone and speak to each other is just so foreign to them. And I think that's where it comes together in what you're saying is that we're so connected, but we're lonely because we don't want to talk to each other anymore.
Yeah, 1,000%. And I'm not one to say technology is both good and bad, right? There's so many things that the kids do now that's maybe better than it was when I was in high school or when you were. Or that's different, but it's one part of it, and we're not used to being in each other's space anymore either,
Mm.
right? Maybe 30 years ago, you would meet at the football pitch and you'd hang out on a Friday night and you'd watch the game and you'd connect with your friends and you talk to them all there. But now we have a lot of kids that are too anxious to do that, but they'll sit in their
Yeah.
bedroom and message each other all night. It's a really different dynamic. But psychologically, when we think about it, when we message or we communicate in more of these modern ways, it leaves so much to interpretation,
Mm.
right? Because I can't pick up on your body language. I can't pick up on your tone. I can't pick up on your vibe. And a lot of times mentally things get misinterpreted a lot, and that can cause a lot of mental distress and it can cause a lot of problems with kids moods. Okay, does that make
Mm.
sense?
Yeah.
Because when we're left to interpret, especially as adolescents and our brains developing, we mostly go to the worst case scenario. Okay, so if
Mm.
the friend doesn't message back right away within 5 seconds,
Yeah.
the thought goes to, oh my gosh, they don't like me, or they're going to dump me, or they think I'm ugly, right? Some of those cognitive factors start to come in, which again, in the past, we did not have that social expectation because I wasn't expected to be on my smartphone and answer you immediately,
Yeah. Yeah.
right?
I've seen that with them, and they get completely wound up by the fact that someone hasn't opened their
Hmm.
message in 10 seconds or 60 seconds. I'm like, maybe they just gone to the toilet.
Yeah, and it's so interesting that you bring that up both at that level, but then back to that first question about entrepreneurs. A lot of the entrepreneurs that I work with, if they haven't completely scaled their business to a certain point, are completely exhausted. They hate their customers and they want to leave because as customers we've grown up to expect everything instantaneously.
Mm.
And it's put an extra layer of pressure on entrepreneurs and organizations that maybe wasn't there in the past. And again, it's good in a lot of ways. I love that my Amazon package comes the next day, but we don't have patience and self-regulation skills now to wait. And that has changed the way that we live. It's changed our mental health, and it's changing the way that we have to operate businesses and organizations.
Mm. Yeah. So I've seen that a lot with agency owners. Like maybe someone sent you an email about their content yesterday at like 5:30, and I had one particular customer. She'd send me an email at 4:15 to
Mm,
say I needed to do something. By 9:30 she sent me a message saying, "Don't worry about it. I've done it myself." It's
mm.
like
Exactly. Right.
and then, and by 9:15 the next morning is like, "Well, why didn't you do it?" It's like,
Yeah. So I think that wear and tear has changed entrepreneurship for a lot of people. And it's changed the way that we interact in relationships, even in personal or romantic relationships. That expectation that you should be always available to answer your text message or to check in is it's just not realistic, but it's something that's playing out every single day in people's lives.
Yeah. Yeah. 100%. I can see it as a business owner, as a wife, as a mother, watching my kids, the way they react when people don't answer their messages. And it was very interesting on Dan's call last week. No, not last week, this week. He was saying how he trains people to not to expect an answer in under 24 hours. And if you're a real douche, he's only going to answer you in 48 hours.
Yeah, no, so I think he's got it. He's definitely got it down pat. That's for sure.
Yeah, for sure. Wonderful. So we're coming to the end of that. What do you think are your top tips, your top three pieces of advice that you could give to entrepreneurs, parents to really manage and their own mental health without giving us the standard Google response?
Yeah, for parents, I would just say a lot of times take a breath, right? So many parents care so deeply for their kids and they want their kids to just be okay and for everything to be okay. And a lot of times the parents' own anxiety about their performance as a parent starts to really impact the relationship, right? And there's no textbook on parenting. Try to just schedule that time where you can connect positively with your kid. And it could be an hour a week, it could be 2 hours a week where you are really mindful about let's turn off our phones, let's just connect. It's not because you're in trouble, it's not because it's a bad interaction, right? Because so many of the interactions end up being negative and combative. But if you can schedule that time and just set it aside there, and no matter what happens during the week, we're going to spend that time together and we're going to connect with each other. What's going to happen is that relationship is going to start to flourish again. And then when something comes up with the kids' mental health or anything along the way as they age, that trust and that bond and that security is going to be there. Does that make sense? Because with
Yeah.
all of us, we're stressed, we're trying to juggle so many things, and then the interactions with our kids tend to be very transactional. Go get your homework or start supper or why did you come home late from the dance? So if you can schedule that time out in advance, it's a big investment that you can make. That's really helpful. So that would be my answer for the parents. And for entrepreneurs, I would just check in with yourself and ask yourself, am I really lonely? And do I need to connect with some other people? They could be entrepreneurs, they could be different friends, new friends, and start to invest in some of those relationships again. It doesn't need to be every week, it doesn't need to be every night, but ask yourself that. And that can go a long way in helping us build that mental resilience that we need to be able to withstand the sea of entrepreneurship.
Absolutely. So I would say on those two things, one on the parenting side, my daughter is a figure skater and we have quite a long drive to the rink. And so we go twice a week. And actually, although, yes, I'm probably completely nuts to do it every week, the quality time of that hour in the car has been immense in terms of just having conversations. Maybe we've got the music going and we're just enjoying time together, but we've had some really meaningful conversations in that time travel in the car. So that's
Yeah,
been really good.
excellent example, right? And that can go, that's already paying its dividends and it brings that joy and that connection back to the relationship,
Mm,
right? It's not just a transactional thing. You look forward to it. You start to understand your daughter's world. And for us as adults, we can hold a lot of judgment towards the teenagers, even subconsciously, and constantly compare it to how it was when we were kids and stuff.
yeah.
But on the flip side of that, the kids, they're really in tune with global issues and they have a
Mm,
lot of strengths that maybe I didn't have when I was in high school. I'm happy to
yeah.
hear that you're spending that time with her.
Yeah, absolutely. We're 100%. They're way ahead of where we were in that sense, and I do value that time a lot. I miss it when work means I don't get to go.
Mm.
Then on the other side, so your points around entrepreneurship and ideas for them, I have noticed that it is really important to surround yourself or to have some aspect of your friendship circle who are also entrepreneurs because
Mm.
people and not just entrepreneurs, but people who are at a similar stage and maybe one or two steps ahead of you.
Yeah.
Because I have had situations where the friendship circle, they just don't understand the struggle. And so you can't just have that let your hair down, share what's really going on. You've got to just go, yeah, it's fine. It's fabulous. It's booming.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, really good point. And I'm happy to hear that you are doing that and making those connections. And for me, I still struggle with it sometimes, and I still need to hold myself accountable to it to make sure that I do actually invest in it and do those things.
Yeah, brilliant. Thank you very much, Rankyn. I have loved talking with you today. I think we could talk about the trials and tribulations of being an entrepreneur for many hours. And hopefully we'll get to do that at some point over a glass of wine. But for today, where could people connect with you to learn more about Campbell Health and how you could support them?
Yeah, I echo that. Thanks so much for having me on. If people want to learn more about me or Campbell Health, they can find me on my LinkedIn, both at Rankyn Campbell and at Campbell Health. Also, they can visit our website, campbellhealth.net, or any one of our other social media platforms. Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Wonderful. Thank you, everyone. It is Leanne Scott here with Rankyn Campbell on the Profitable Podcast by Chirp.